Well, we're on the air. Hi, everybody. Joe Chaffee on the Joe Weather Show. Joe Rayo is here tonight. There he is, right there. His face is freezing on the shot every once in a while. That is beyond my control. So I don't know if the problem is on his end or if it's on his end. So,
I'm
Mr.
back.
Rayo, oh, this is
Yes,
cool. Your face is now split in two. You got half your forehead's off on one angle, and your eyes were offset in another.
well, here I am.
Where are you? You're
I'm right
frozen.
here.
No, we hear you, but your shot's frozen. Now there you go. Take a go
So,
push yourself a little bit back. Take a step back on the chair. Just a hair.
oh,
It's still froze. There you go. See, now that's a much better shot. Now speak to me.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
All right. Well, um, yeah, they were saying that you were way too close up on the camera, and now you're a fair distance. Whatever's going on with the internet signal, it's getting hung up somewhere. Mine seems to be going okay, so I think it might be in the translation between me and you. But as long as we can hear you, that's okay. So,
Fantastic.
let me bring up this subject matter here. I'm getting exceedingly annoyed. Okay, one of the things I can't stand about social media is that you find yourself being forced to read things you really normally wouldn't want to read or don't want to be bothered with. But a bunch of people. Let me bring it up on the screen, and then you can chime in if you'd like. So this morning, the yesterday ESRL had problem with the teleconnections. They basically put up a blank page. So they must have had, some kind of hiccup from the day after Christmas. Okay, I can kind of understand that. So now, as they did today's, I'm going to bring it up on the window here. Hang on one second. Where is it? Okay, so this is what they came up with off the Zero Z ensemble. So one of the things that you'll notice is that PNA index, the Pacific North America index, Mr. Rayo, is completely off the wall negative. The NAO is slightly negative up until New Year's, and then it's kind of slightly positive. To me, it's like hovering in the neutral zone. And the EPO, the East Pacific Oscillation, is actually goes from being rather strongly positive around the second or third of January, and it crashes down to the neutral line, which I always find kind of impressive when they do that. And then it just kind of stays neutral to slightly negative after that. But the bottom line for me is, everybody was kind of all focused on this off the wall PNA index. And of course, from that, the conversation inevitably turns to the fact that winter is over. So just kind of want your thoughts on that, because I'm kind of getting tired of reading these supposed grown-ups behaving like emotional, really emotional temper tantrum throwing 5-year-olds, that because it's not snowing every waking minute from November 1st to April 30th, that winter is over.
Well, yesterday I was thinking that we might have at least a short-term shot of some very cold air coming in for around the 4th or 5th of January, or the 6th, the Epiphany. But now, today, the ensemble from the European, while it does show a push of somewhat colder air by about January 6th, it's not quite as intense or as robust as what it was showing 24 hours ago. It
Right.
keeps the really cold air north of the New York State border up in Quebec, whereas yesterday they were kind of suggesting they would plunge all the way southward to our neck of the woods by about the 6th or 7th of January. So I'm not quite sure. It does stay cold, quote unquote, here after the 6th of January till about the 11th or 12th of January. So, I mean, there's nothing that suggests that we're going to be into any unseasonably warm or mild weather pattern after the 6th, but it just doesn't look quite as cold or as possibly frigid as what we were looking at. I also, Joe, looked at the 3 to 4 week experimental. I'm wondering when the heck are they going to stop terming this particular prog at Climate Prediction Center the 3 to 4 week probability prog as experimental. It's been experimental for 2 years now. But if you did look at it today, it comes out on Friday afternoon. It suggests that for the middle and latter part of January, above normal temperatures and also above normal precipitation, which may suggest in their minds maybe more rain than snow as we
Maybe,
move through the
but
middle.
that's that's such a transient forecast in my view. And by the way, everybody's focused on the cold that's going on. I thought I'd bring up the digital forecast for Alaska tonight, and looking for lows of -40 to -50 to below zero in some places in the interior. Although right along the immediate coast, temperatures are actually going to bottom above freezing, down right along the coast of the Gulf of Alaska, and then when you go southeastward down toward Juneau, where it's in the mid 30s to around 40. But the interior of Alaska is brutally cold. And usually when it's like that, Joe, usually the weather across the U.S., or at least in the eastern part of the U.S., is what I guess we could describe it as being non-winter like. The thing that is bothering me about it all is the fact that it just, you know, I just don't understand where this expectation has come from with regards to the winters here in the Northeast. I mean, unrelenting cold and snow just doesn't happen very often. So I don't know why there's this there's this expectation that somehow the fact that we haven't seen much snow in the month of December is tantamount to heresy and blasphemy, and that the winter is over. I don't know. It's just me. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm being a little too sensitive about this sort of stuff. But it just bothers me when I read this nonsense. It's not forecasting to me.
You know,
That's
I did a little bit of numerology here. We're likely not to see any more snow in Central Park for the rest of this month. So far in December,
Well, there's a forecast for you. It's the 27th. So okay, good. 4 days. Go
they
on.
had Central Park has had 2.5 inches of snow so far this month of December. So I thought I'd look at past records going all the way back to the beginning, 1869, and I
Right.
gave a leeway of about 4/10 of an inch either way. So from 2.1 to 2.9 inches. I looked at all of the winters that had anywhere from 2.1 to 2.9 inches.
And this, by
Came
the
up
way,
with snow.
Scott Briller, the chairman, who is not on tonight. He's visiting a friend of his who is ill. But he mentioned a statistic similar to this. So go ahead, and then I'll tell you what he came up with.
All right. Well, we've had one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine. We've had 10 other winters in that 2.1 to 2.9 inch range. And I came up with an average of those 10 winters for Central Park of 19.5 inches. If you take into account the fact that the last 30 years at Central Park, and this is not official yet, I mean, it has not gone up on the Upton, New York climate tables, but in the last 30 winters, we've averaged at Central Park 30.1
Right,
inches of snow.
right.
If you
And
look
Long
at if you
Island,
look
we've
at
averaged 40.
right, so if you look at this 2.1 to 2.9 inch range, those 10 other winters, like this particular winter, not once in any of those other 10 winters have we seen more than 28.8 inches of snow, and in a lot of cases, they've been less than 20 inches.
Right.
So just go
But
by
I
Central.
could also tell I could argue two things. So let me just really quick let me find that the stat that Scott brought up to me. Hang on one second.
I mean, if you
Um,
just go by numerology, if you just go by those numbers, that would suggest that Central Park would end up with below normal being 30.1 inches, below normal snowfall for this particular season that we're in right now. And that doesn't necessarily mean that if you live outside of New York that you too are going to see below normal. For example, up here where I live, here in Putnam Valley,
you could
although
well be above normal.
Central Park is at 2.5 inches, I've had a solid 6 inches so far. So I don't know if you want to, take that into account and multiply these numbers by, let's say, two or three. It might still suggest I could get like 50 or 60 inches up here, not Central Park. But if you live in the immediate confines of the New York metropolitan area, these numbers seem to suggest, if it follows along the last 10 winters of similar numbers for December that we will have below normal snowfall in.
So here's what I would say to that. All right, so this is here's Scott's stat. Again, this is only for one particular point in New York City, and it's really deceptive because so many times, if you go north and west, or north or northeast, or even east of New York City, the numbers are much higher in terms of snowfall in a lot of instances.
Right.
Not all, but in a lot. Scott's stat that there have been 50 years going back. Going back to 1869. So in 50 years, Central Park did not record 3 inches of snow, at least 3 inches of snow, up until January 1st. So 37 of those 50 winters finished with below average snowfall. Now, I don't know what he used for an average, if we're talking 30, 25, which mean we're using, but let's assume that we'll just go by what he said. 37. So 13, only 13 out of the 50 were above normal. And that's with the park not reaching getting that 3 inch snowfall. So, but see, my problem with that is, my problem with these things is the data set size. I mean, you remember you had that was it that 3 inch? Was that the Christmas
Right.
rule? 3 inches before Christmas? Was that it? Or 3 inches in the month of December?
3 inches in December.
So the 3 inches in December rule worked until it didn't work, because it worked, what, like the 15 or 16 times in a row, and
Right.
then everybody kind of jumped, as always. This is so typical with weather stuff. When you find this magic bullet, you think, oh my God, this is really going to be the answer, and I can do something with this. And the minute you do that, you're immediately, it stops working.
Right.
I start to wonder about, like, the focus to Siberian snow cover. It worked until everybody started jumping on it, and then suddenly it seemed to stop working. So I don't know. I guess there's always a part of me that wants to be contrary, and find the way it'll fail this time around. But yeah, you could also look at it, since most of the winters are below average anyway. Uh, is it kind of just left up to chance here? I don't know, but we'll see. I just I don't see how, as a weather buff, I don't see how, as a weather buff, you can make unequivocal statements about 3 months worth of weather, because you woke up one morning and you saw one index show off the wall readings that inevitably you misread, and you think that ultimately cancels out 90 days of weather. I just don't get that.
I like that term, magic bullet. We're all looking for that way
Yeah.
to definitively say, at a certain point in the beginning of the winter season, we're going to get X amount of snow, or we're going to see such and such in terms of temperature. And as you just pointed out, that magic bullet seems to always evade us. When we think that we have something, it goes in the opposite direction. But just a matter of curiosity or whatever, that's how it looks right now. We have not ever seen, in the span of 2.1 to 2.9 inches in all of the Decembers past. Those Decembers that fell in that time range, that not time range, but that amount range, has always ended up below normal. But the normal snowfall has been in flux. It has always
Yes.
changed. I mean, like 20, 30 years ago, it was a lot closer to 22 or 24 inches for Central Park. It's only been in the last 2 decades that we've seen that climb up to over 30 inches.
I'm just moving your window around, Joe, because I'm trying to read the chat, and um, we have someone on here, a new person from North Dakota, on the chat board tonight. Wait a minute, and I got to put myself back up on the chat board. Hang on a second here. There you go. So you're there. I'm here, and it is James Goebel. Welcome aboard. And he says, He's in Fargo, North Dakota, and yeah, you're in for a wallop. They're going for 18 to 24 where he is with this storm that's coming out of the Southwest. So now, getting back to just the short term weather situation, Joe. I've been kind of the opinion that since the middle part of October, I always try to look for that rhyme. Okay, that the weather patterns weather pattern once it sets up, it may not repeat exactly, and we've talked about this, you and I, but there is a tendency for these sorts of things to rhyme. And one of the things that I've noticed, this so far since the middle part of October, we had a 3 week stretch of very active, colder than average weather, very active. Then about 10 days where it's been kind of on the warm and somewhat inactive side. Then got active again for about 3 weeks, which includes the December 1st, 2nd interior New York State, New England snowstorm. Okay, and that lasted about a 2 to 3 week period until about the 18th, 19th, when we had that quick last shot of cold air. And now, of course, we're in this warm and rather quiet period that looks to carry us into the middle part of next week before I think it's going to get active again. And there are some cold shots on the models, but I have to. There's so much stuff going on with the whole profile of what the atmosphere looks like right now that I really am I'm having kind of a trouble figuring out where this is all going to wind up.
It is kind of bizarre, yeah, and it's kind of like we're trying to play three or four different types of chess games all at once, and trying to anticipate the various moves in advance. It is difficult, and like I said yesterday, it looked like to me like we were going to be in for a rather robust shot of some very cold weather around the 6th or 7th. It still looks like it's going to turn colder around the 6th or 7th, but it doesn't look like it's going to be that big shot of frigidity. And then you have to start looking at the folks who specialize in this kind of stuff, the folks at the Climate Prediction Center, and why are they suggestive that we're going to see a large area above normal temperatures for our part of the country for the middle and latter part of January? That doesn't really bode well, I think, if you are a snow lover. But then on the other hand, a few winters ago,
They
we've
just
seen cases
changed those
we've seen
people.
cases where it's been very, very warm, and all of a sudden, boom! Within a day
Right,
or two, we get snow. So
but
that necessarily is an ingredient or a factor in foretelling whether or not we're going to have some snow here.
they just back not 10 days ago, I think it was. They changed their 30 and 90 day forecast for January and for January, February, and March. Suddenly, they went below average temperatures and above average precip for pretty much everybody north of like 38 degrees north.
Hmm.
So all of the Northeast, down to about southern New Jersey, west across to the Great Lakes and in the Northern Plains. So they kind of flipped their forecast from what to a large extent from what they had earlier with regards to the December, January, February time frame. And as soon as they do that, the whole pattern just gets what's the word I'm looking for?
Discombobulated.
Well, yeah, and you know now everybody's kind of focused on whether it's going to be above normal for the next 3 months. But I brought up, Joe, the upper air here. I got the GFS from today's late afternoon run, and I have it up for tonight 0Z. And one of the big problem here is if we follow the jet along, it is the polar vortex is locked up, completely locked up over Alaska. It's just sitting there. There's no, all the cold air is pinned up in that particular region. And you've got this Pacific jet here that keeps bringing weather systems along, but when you look at the flow across Canada, it's pretty much west to east. There's no cross polar flow whatsoever. So this is why we're warm. Now I've seen people post about the fact of this quote raging Pacific jet. That's not the issue. The Pacific jet this year is not like last year where you had this ruler from Japan all the way to the west coast. The problem is that the polar vortex is in completely the wrong spot, up north of over Alaska, and it's locked up there for
Right.
at least a few more days. Now it does get dislodged when we go into next week, and actually, I thought the compared to last night's 0Z runs, the 12 and 18Z runs of the GFS, and even to a certain extent the Europeans' operational run, uh, were not horrible if you're a winter weather lover. But if you watch here, folks, you can see that polar vortex kind of moves over to toward northern Greenland. And while it's not ideal, you do start to get a little bit more of a Canadian connection as we go into that period, as you mentioned earlier, Joe, around January 5th, January 6th. That looks to be the time frame. And the model keeps trying to focus on whether there might be a coastal storm to bring to with all of this. It's been doing it on every run for the last 8 or 9 days, showing some kind of coastal storm uh, uh, to usher in this cold air. It sort of lost it, but not quite lost it, and then it brought it back again late this afternoon.
Would you call
Uh,
that a pattern changer?
Well, I kind of think that this system that's going underway right now sort of starts the ball rolling here. You've got the polar vortex getting dislodged to a certain degree late in the week and early next week, and you have this lead system that's going up into the Great Lakes. I think that is, that starts to me, that starts the ball rolling with respect to changing the weather, the overall pattern. And of course, I've said this many times. The pattern change you want and the pattern change you get are not necessarily the same thing. So just beware. You could have a pattern if you're a winter weather lover. You could have a pattern that absolutely stinks from the standpoint of winter weather, and it changes into a different weather pattern that also stinks as far as winter weather is concerned. It just tortures you in a completely different way.
And don't you love the news, the mainstream media, what they've been saying every time we get a significant weather scenario, they always lead off with 41 million people will be affected by. They must have some kind of a computer, geographic computer
Oh yeah,
machine
you can you
where
can
you can outline the states or outline the region, and it automatically tells you the population of the numbers that are in that region, and then they lead off with that every time we have again a major weather event at hand to impress us about the fact that all of these people, you and all these other people, are going to be affected by this
I
same
know. Well, it's
catastrophic
the
or
it's
cataclysmic
the
event.
sheer yeah, it's the enormity of the number. Oh my God, 41 million people. Okay, well we're kind of a country of 300 million, so if you're talking about maybe 20% or 15% of the population being impacted by a winter storm, I mean, is that really a big deal? I don't know. That doesn't really impress me very much. But yeah, I'm just running the GFS because James from Fargo, North Dakota. Yeah, it looks like you're going to get hammered with some mixed precip that goes over to heavy snow for a little while during Saturday night into Sunday. Funny thing is, Joe, when you look at this low doesn't it gets up into southern Minnesota and just kind of stops and starts redeveloping to the east because you actually do have a little bit of blocking going on that's holding a high in place in eastern Canada. And I wonder whether that might mean for some snow and ice issues, possibly for upstate New York, Albany northward, as we go into Sunday night, Monday, and on up into Vermont, New Hampshire, maybe even down into northern Massachusetts. The European actually had frozen and freezing precipitation all the way down to Route 84 in Connecticut come late Sunday night, Monday morning. I don't know if that's a little bit too far south, but you actually do have a little bit of blockiness going on here that is forcing this low to redevelop. Gets instead of flying up toward James Bay and into Labrador, it just comes to a crashing halt and then just redevelops to the east.
Well, the big question is, will on the triple point, the point where the point of occlusion, so to speak, of the storm, as the storm begins to mature to its strongest point, there's that triple point where a secondary low may form, and if it forms fast enough, it may serve as the cutoff for any milder air to move in, and may actually serve to help to keep that cold air pinned in over the portions of the Northeast that you mentioned, from the Hudson Valley points north, enough so that we may see frozen precipitation instead of just plain rain. But that could only be just the initial shot. I think ultimately, even up in those areas, they're going to change over to just plain rain, as
Well,
the
it could be. It could be. This is not. You're not dealing with a whole lot of cold air here. And after that goes out, I mean, it looks like at least through the middle part of next week, through New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, not too much is going to be going on. And then we'll set up for a system late in the week, which the models seem to lose a little bit today, and putting more of its attention on a system for Sunday night into Monday, where the GFS is back to producing a coastal low east of North Carolina, passing well southeast of Cape Cod, and changes it over to snow in southeastern New England. Of course, we're at day 9 here, so who knows if that's even correct. But this is in response to some changes in the overall upper air flow as we move into toward past January 6th, January 7th, January 8th. I don't know. I find that for me, I have to just kind of watch this thing evolve over the next 10 days. The models themselves, both the short and the intermediate and long, and all three, I should say, not just both, short, intermediate, and long term, models in the last 10 days or so have been horribly volatile. They've been flipping back and forth and going in all sorts of different directions, and I go back to that period back in February, March of 2018, where we had off the wall readings, negative readings in the Pacific North America Index and eventually in the NAO. And we wound up with those 4 nor'easters. I'll only bring that up because my point is that when you get these extreme readings on those teleconnection indices, models have a lot of trouble getting their act together and figuring out what's going to happen. So I would be really cautious from run to run on any solution outside of the 5 or 6 day time frame, even more so than usual.
Oh, absolutely, especially in the wintertime. What was it, about 2, 3 years ago? It was I remember it was a Super Bowl Sunday, and up until that time, we were just thinking that the upcoming week was going to be fair and dry or no real weather problems. And the first signal on that particular Super Bowl Sunday of some kind of system developing by midweek, and I said, "Oh, what the heck is this all about?" And it just popped up out of literally nowhere. And within a day or two, we were prepping for what turned out to be a major snowstorm, if not close to blizzard-like conditions. And this all popped up within a matter of just
Right, but
a
that
day.
was in a winter, and active winters, snow begets snow. It always seems in those busy winters where snow happens a lot, that it just finds a way, and you get these systems that sometimes they magically appear, or if they don't magically appear, there's subtle hints of them, and then at the last minute they just kind of blow up in front of you. In an inactive winter, the opposite happens, where the models will show you these big storms and they all tend to fall apart. I'm showing, by the way, I don't know if you can see it. I put up
I'm looking at it.
I put up the snow forecast map for the Northern Plains, where they've got all sorts of winter storm warnings up, and you can see how much from the digital display, the digital forecast data display, showing 15 inches plus in a lot of areas. So our new viewer here from North Dakota is going to have a field day because he's going to be in the middle of another big storm, and they've already had their fair share so far this winter.
And you know, the funny thing, Flo, the two of us, we have experienced on Christmas Day, we have seen significant snowfalls, major snow events, and yet this is like the umpteenth time in our lifetime, I think, where New Year's Day or New Year's Eve has avoided that type of scenario. I'm still waiting in my life for a major snowstorm or a blizzard to hit, let's say, on the evening of New Year's Eve, just to see how many people will turn out in Times Square, for example. In all the years that I've been watching on television, the New Year's Eve festivities at Times Square, it's either been very warm, very, very frigid, as we saw a couple of years ago. We've had heavy rain, but we've never ever seen a major snowfall
Have we
on
seen a
New Year's
minor?
Eve.
Have we had a minor snowfall?
Well, the only two cases there in New Year's Eve, 1970, there was a 6 or 8 inch snowstorm that started after midnight, after the ball dropped, and New Year's morning, I woke up to about 6 or 7 inches of snow in the Bronx. And you may remember, about
I'm sorry,
20
what year was that, Joe?
1970, New
Okay,
Year's Eve.
I kind of remember that.
And then about 20 years ago, in fact, it was the day before New Year's Eve on a Saturday in 2000. We had a heavy duty snowstorm, something like 6 to 12 inches of snow. It started just before daybreak on a Saturday morning. It was the 30th of December.
Right.
And then it ended by that evening. But again, had it been, let's say, a day later or a day and a half later, it would have hit during, the New Year's Eve festivities at Times Square. But it always seems that every year, New Year's Eve seems to escape a major winter storm. Whereas, again, Christmas, just a week earlier, I can name you several cases where there have been major snowfalls on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve.
Well, and
It
there
always
wasn't
seems to mix.
a couple of years ago when we had the big storm. Was it? I forgot what year it was. Where it was January 3rd, January 4th.
Right.
When was that? Was that 17?
I think I was 17. Yeah.
Yeah. So even there, you missed a major storm by a couple of days from the standpoint of New Year's. I look if I guess maybe just to kind of wrap it up here. I just tend to think that um, here we are at the 27th of December. You've got the entire month of January and February and a good chunk of the month of March. If this were just sort of an average year, um, as for snow lovers, you got a lot of time, and there's a lot of things that are going to happen along the way, and I'm sure there will be a few surprises. On the other side of that, I would like to point out that if we wind up with subnormal snow again in the I-95 corridor, this will be 2 years in a row, 2 winters in a row. That has only happened that has not happened in this decade where we've
Right.
had back to back. Okay, the decade doesn't end until the end of 2020. Just
Right.
okay. So let's just lay that down. But we have not had back to back below average years in this decade, and we had it only once in the last decade. If you go back to the prior 30 years, uh, that's all you had from 1970 to 2000 was basically below average years, with the occasional above average winter or two. So you've been definitely spoiled. So if you wind up with back to back years of below average, that'll take you back to '06, '07, and '07, '08. The last time we had back to back below average years.
Basically, the
It
last two
happens.
decades, basically the last 2 decades, we've had like 7 or 8 above normal years for each decade,
Yeah.
snow-wise,
Hmm.
and 2 or 3 below normal. And as you pointed out, beyond 20 years ago, we used to go, I think, during the decades of the 70s, the 80s, and 90s, just the opposite. We may have gotten like 2 or 3 above normal snow
And the rest
years,
were all not just below average, but way below average.
way
You got a
below
whole
average.
bunch of years where you got less than 10 inches for the whole winter.
Right, right. I can remember the winter of 72, 73. What was it? 3 inches for the whole winter in
Right. And
70.
what about was it 96, 97, or 97, 98? One of those where we didn't get a single accumulating snow event through the actual through the 3 winter months, December,
Right,
January, February, and also through the astronomical winter from December 21st to March 21st. Not a single accumulating snow event. The only accumulating snow came the day after the first day of spring,
right.
and it was like it was confined to a small area in and around New York City that got about 3 to 5 inches. Everybody else got next to nothing, and that was that. So don't cry to me if we wind up with a subnormal year. And of course, from there, the apocalyptics out there will proclaim that this is all due to this, that, or the other thing. The ocean's too warm, the ocean's too cold, the winds in the the ice. There's too much sea ice. There's not enough sea ice. And on and on and on it goes. It just happens sometimes.
Yes, I agree with you 100%.
And
You
by
know,
the way, this is this. this is also another example, much like the last several winters. You know, it is blasphemy to put out a winter forecast on social media that is anything other than one that states that the winter will produce below average temperatures and above normal snowfall in the I-95 corridor. If you even remotely suggest that it could be anything but that, you will be burned at the stake. Okay, stretched at the rack, burned at the stake, and beheaded. Okay, so you know, you can't really take too seriously any of the stuff that you see you see out there. It's just wrapped with emotionalism and temper tantrums, and I can't stand it anymore.
Well, these are people. I don't know what the demographic is of the people who watch our video shows here.
They are all incredibly intelligent. They are? No, listen, our audience is solid here. Okay? I'm really I have to tell you something, Joe, and one of the reasons why I stuck with YouTube when I started doing live streams on here is that the folks that are on here are genuinely interested in weather, and of course we have a few whose job it is to take all the trolls and throw them off. So we've got ourselves a pretty darn great audience, and I'm quite proud of them.
I'm happy about that. I just say that a lot of the people who are watching might be of a certain age where they just don't remember those winters of the 90s and 80s and 70s that we went through, and those are the sufferers now who say, "What's going on?" It happens. You're going to end up with a winter or two that falls below the norms in terms of snowfall, but there'll be other years. I'm sure that. We'll be paying for that. And we don't even know yet. I mean, the winter just started officially a couple of days ago. Who's to say? Later in January, February, even March. We had a significant snowfall last winter. I think it was what, March 2nd or 3rd?
Right.
So, I mean, like, who's to know what's waiting for us around the next bend, so to speak, so far as this winter season is concerned? I, like you, just simply say, let's play it by ear.
Okay, Joe. Apparently, your mic is now echoing for some reason, and I'm not sure why. So you know what?
My mic is echoing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is. So,
Did you announce yet, or do you want me to announce? Congratulations to.
he says you now sound like God. Hold on a second. I don't know. I don't know what's happened. I haven't touched anything. Um, Wait. Hold on. Let's see if that works.
Jason Barry says I'm echoing through your mic.
You're coming through my mic.
Jason Barry says I think Joe Rayo's sound is echoing through Joe Chiappi's mic.
All right. So I just shut off. I don't know. Maybe I accidentally turned a mic on. One of the mic ports on. Now I only have one mic turned on.
All right. So how do I sound?
There's a 20-second delay on the posts on the board. You sound like the voice from above.
Today, I consider myself the
Yeah,
luckiest man on the face of the earth.
Bill Uber says you sound like you're in Yankee Stadium. Now batting.
Now batting, number 2, Derek
Jeter. Number
2.
two. All right, you know what? Whatever's going on, let's call an end to it. So,
wait a minute, we gotta say congratulations to you, Grandpa.
Oh yeah, I got a new grandson.
Congratulations.
Yeah, he was supposed to come a little bit later. It wasn't due till the very beginning of January, but he decided that he wanted to be born in this tax year, which which makes my son-in-law very happy. So now I've got 2 grandboys, and that's another train set for somebody. Although I think if my daughter hears about that part of the equation, she's not going to be too happy. I've already taken over the big family room in her house with trains.
I just want to tell you, Joe, that I'm not going to light it up, but I still have my cigar here.
I don't want to be within 100 miles when you do, because that cigar has been in the not in a good. Can I just tell you what you do? Can I ask you something? Tell you something? just in case. Put it in a Ziploc bag, okay?
Yeah.
And go. You could either soak a sponge in some distilled water, okay, and then put that in the Ziploc bag with it. Don't take the cigar out of the wrapper, just to kind of bring it back to life. Because I swear, if you try to smoke that, if the Mets ever win the World Series, it's going to disintegrate right in your hands.
First of all, yeah, the only way I'm going to smoke this cigar, there are two caveats to this. The Mets would either have to win the World Series, which of course they came very close to doing 4 years ago, except they were wiped out by the Kansas City Royals. Or if I ever win an Emmy, I've been nominated for an Emmy 8 times, and now that I'm out of broadcasting for the moment, that chance may never come to me again. But I either have to win an Emmy or the Mets have to win the World Series for me to like this. This cigar dates back to when my cousin Veronica, she had no, my cousin Mario. My cousin Mario had a boy, Vincent, who was born in 2000. We went to the christening. They were handing these cigars out. So this cigar is now going to be 20 years old. I've been waiting to light this up for 20 years now. And I've always kept it right here in my drawer, in my office drawer here, and so it will stay.
All right. Well, I'm just saying you might.
Unless you'd like me to light it up right now in honor of your second.
No, don't do that. I think Mrs. Rayo will blow a gasket if you do. So this is little Nolan Andrew, by the way. So he's was 6 pounds, 6 pounds 13 ounces, I think he was. So and definitely very alert when I saw the first pictures of him. Because so now I got to plan another trip down south to see him. It's very, very exciting. Very exciting development today, and I certainly could not be happier. Yes, a Delaware weather guy commenting about the fact that my love for trains. So the next time I'm down in your way to the Western Railroad, which is a 5 mile ride up and back, absolutely. And that's also on my list of things to do when I go back down to Georgia to go up to Blue Ridge and take the Blue Ridge scenic train ride that they have up there, up in the mountains at the base of the Appalachians. So that's also on my list of things to do.
Well, I wish you the best of you and your daughter, the best, and your son-in-law, and congratulations.
Thank you.
With the Choppy family.
Yeah, we're kind of getting larger, which is good. It's a good thing. Your day will come.
Well, first of all, I have to get one of my kids married. My son will be marrying his fiance on July the 3rd, and then after that, we'll see.
By the way,
maybe this time next year, but
just
that may be a little fast, a little quick on the draw there.
By the way, you know that from the standpoint of Emmys, I believe that we are eligible to enter this show in the Emmys if we so choose.
Well, if we do that, Joe, we have to wait until next September.
All right, so you know what? We'll do that maybe for the following for next September and see if we can find a cat because they do the internet submissions are allowed, so we can certainly do an internet submission with regards to this program, and maybe it'll be an Emmy winning program. If not, it should be.
We'll certainly see on that. I've also heard rumors that every other year at the Western Connecticut School College in WestCon, they have a weather gathering that they have. I think it's in early September.
Right.
And there were rumors a year or so ago that they were thinking about asking us to be the moderator.
Well, they still haven't confirmed those rumors because you and I haven't heard anything.
Well, if they want,
they better get off their schneid if they want us there, because I'm booking fishing trips here. So are we being subtle?
What are you doing? My
Mrs. Rayo.
Off camera here, and she's telling me to stay away from the camera.
No, you're too far away from the mic.
Oh, I'm too far away from the mic. How about this? Hello, how are you?
Hi, Renata.
She's celebrating a birthday today.
Happy birthday! So
I will not tell you how old she is, or else I'll be dead.
Well, so then my new grandson was born on the same day as your wife's birthday.
My wife. That's right.
Oh, wow. Happy birthday to him.
Yes, thank you. It's
A special day, and Don Imus died on the same day.
So
I don't
we,
know what that means, but
well, 2 out of 3,
yeah,
which is a
as
good
Pete
thing.
Mo said.
All right, Joe. So look, let's call it a night. So maybe Sunday morning on the coffee with Chaffee.
Yes, I'll be around on Sunday morning around 10:30ish or so. I wasn't too happy. I said to you last night. I always look forward to Charles Osgood coming back and singing Christmas carols, and he didn't do it this year. But again, Charles Osgood is now 87, and I think he has much better things to do on a Sunday morning now than get up and go into New York City just to sing a few stanzas of Silent Night. But anyway, yeah, I'll be around on Sunday morning, and maybe we'll have something interesting to talk about.
Sounds like a plan.
And by the way, I
Yes.
posted this on my Facebook page. If any of you are out and about tomorrow evening around 4:30 or 5 o'clock and look into the western sky, you're going to have what is in essence, I think, a beautiful Christmas ornament in the sky. We're going to have a lovely thin crescent moon, which will look almost three-dimensional because you'll be able to see the dark part of the moon as well. It'll hang like a Christmas ball in the sky, and right above it will be the planet Venus, shining like a brilliant, beacon. So it'll make for a very lovely celestial tableau, if you will. And I'm sure that there'll be a few people calling TV and radio stations asking what the UFO is hovering above the moon tomorrow night. But all of you who are watching now will know that it is not a UFO. It's simply Venus and the moon making for a post-Christmas adornment again in our western sky after the sun goes down tomorrow night.
All right, sounds like a plan. All right, Joe. So maybe we'll see you Sunday morning. So you know what? We'll push it. We'll do this. I'll push the Sunday show back to like 10:45. Okay, so this way it gives you 15 minutes.
I'll be around.
Okay.
My cup of tea.
Awesome. All right, so we'll see you then.
Have
And
fun.
to everybody watching tonight, thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you Sunday morning at 10:45 Eastern Time. Good night, everybody.